Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, I'm going to be showing you how I did this painting right here. Now the reason that I did this painting was when I first started painting, I got really discouraged because everything I tried, I failed miserably at. And I got to a point where I was like, why am I even doing this? Everything I'm doing is terrible. So what I did is I actually picked a very simple painting and a very simple subject matter, and I did the painting, and it actually turned out to be rather okay. You can see for yourself. I still have the painting, I'll probably never sell it. But that's why we're doing this video today, is if any of you guys are out there and you're discouraged or maybe just starting, I wanted to do a video to give you some subject matter and walk you through some of the steps of how to get through a simple painting like this to show to your friends or to show yourself that you actually can paint. Because it's very important to prove to yourself that you can do something, because you got to take the little steps first. So without further ado, here we go. The very first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to get a canvas, whatever size you want to do this on, and take a pencil and do a rough sketch of the outline of what you're going to want to do. And once you get finished with that sketch, I would recommend, because this is what I did, erasing the graphite pencil off of your canvas, because what it will do if you're using a very wet kind of paint is it will mix with your paint and give you a nasty gray color, and it's not something you want to do. So what I did is I erased it, not completely, but just enough so the most of the graphite was gone. Now the very first colors that I used are phthalo green and pale green. Now this painting I'm doing is actually a watercolor style. Now if anybody here that's listening or watching this video, actually you're probably going to be watching because I don't actually have this video on any podcast platform, so you're going to be watching. Unless of course you're just listening, but I am getting off track. Now, like I was saying, if you're going to do a watercolor painting, if you are experienced in watercolor, then you already know this, but if you are not, this is something that really helped me out. When you're doing watercolor, you're actually using the canvas as your highlights. So you mix water in with your paint and make it very thin, and then you put that on the canvas, and then where you want the shadows to be, you just mix in more paint, and it actually works in the reverse way that is normal. Now this blue flower that I'm doing right here, I actually did it wrong because I didn't realize that that's the way you had to do it. And I put a lot of paint, like I normally do, with my blues and my whites, and I mixed it together with not much water, and I actually had to go back and I messed with this flower multiple times until it finally was relatively okay, but it kind of looks a little different than all the rest of them because I did it wrong. So when you're doing this style painting, you're going to want to do, and you're going to want to mix a lot of water in with your blues and your greens and whatever colors you're using in order for you to get that nice watercolor feel. Now you could do this as painting, like paint style. You could paint your canvas something that's not pure white or however you want and do it that way, but this particular way that I did this one was a watercolor style. And I had to go back over the blue right here and kind of make it more white so that I could brighten it up and go back over with that liquid color, because I realized right about this point that I'd really screwed up. Now this video is the very first video that I actually have a sponsor. Now the last video that I did was the Artistro paints unboxing video. And like I said, I was going to be doing a full review video in the future. Well, I've been using the paints for maybe a couple weeks now, and I am really liking what I'm seeing, and they have decided to be a sponsor of my channel, and I'm really excited about it. But I'm not gonna really tell you about that until later in the video, because no one ever talks about a sponsor at the beginning of the video. But stay tuned, because I will be talking about that later. Now, as you can see here, I've wised up a little bit as to how to do the watercolor style in acrylic painting. I've got a lot of water on my paintbrush, but I don't have enough where it's gonna run. That's why you see a lot of acrylic watercolor painters using and painting on a flat surface, because they trace out actually the paint that they're gonna use and where they want the paint to be. They actually trace it out in water first, and then they'll just put the paint in the water and it'll kind of spread out. If you've ever seen a video about that, it's actually really cool. Basically what I'm doing right now, if I can keep from just doing things wrong, is I am kind of tracing out where the flowers are going to be. And to be honest, I have not the slightest clue what kind of flower that is, because I'm pretty sure there isn't a flower that looks like that. But hey, as the famous Bob Ross said, it's my world and I am the creator and I can do whatever I want. But if you're trying to be realistic, I would suggest looking up flowers and kind of making sure what they look like before you start painting them so people can recognize them. But hey, this painting took me an hour. Give me a break. So the little buds I'm doing on the top are, once again, I don't really know what kind of flower it is, so I'm not 100% sure if I'm doing it correctly, but I am actually looking at a reference photo, which is why you see my nose and face kind of come into the frame for no reason at all, and look over to the right. That's because that's where my reference photo is sitting, and I'm just kind of roughly copying, but not entirely tracing, the reference photo that I'm using. Now it is a picture that I pulled off of Pinterest, because they actually have a lot better selection than Google. And that's full disclosure, this was not 100% my design and my idea, but I did change it and make it my own. Now this flower is also another one that I'm not 100% sure what kind of a flower it is, but it kind of looked like the reference photo, so I copied it. Now you can pause this video at any point in time if you want to follow along, and if you want to paint. I just kind of eliminated some empty space because I didn't really want this video to be an hour long, and I just kind of jump cuts. That's what these jump cuts are for. I'm just trying to eliminate empty space and capture the stuff that's important. Now, I'm going back over all these flowers and adding in dark because that's the way that I decided to do this painting, and putting in the darks last because, like I've said, you have to use the white of the canvas or the white of the paper when you're doing watercolor style, and that's why this flower looks different than all the rest of them. I did my best to try to make it look natural, but in the end, I don't know if I succeeded. Comment below if you think I did, but hey, when you're doing painting, you're not gonna be 100% successful in everything you do. Learning how to work through things and kind of fix mistakes is gonna be a very valuable tool in your arsenal if you want to do this professionally or as a living or just for fun. So I'm going back over right now and I'm adding more green into the branches just to kind of give it some shadow, and trying to put things in perspective and make sure that the lights are all cohesive and they're all coming from the same direction and the shadows make sense. Now doing this style of painting with acrylic paint actually affords you a few more tools and a few more advantages than doing it in straight watercolor. Is you can actually go back and put white paint on it and highlight things, even though you wouldn't normally be able to do that in the same fashion when you're actually doing a traditional watercolor painting. But this painting can really be done either way, which I thought was really cool. You can do this as a watercolor style, or you can do it as a actual paint style, depending on how you want to do it. Now this yellow color actually will tie together rather nicely with the yellow that is going to be on the bumblebee that I'm going to put in last. I thought that was a nice touch. Even though it's not really necessary, it just adds a little bit more dynamic and it kind of brings everything together a little bit better. I'd like to give a shout out to the sponsor of this video, Artistro Modern Art Materials. Now this right here is a starter pack of acrylic paint. Now this starter pack is something that has everything you would need if you are first starting out in acrylics and trying to get into art. It has 24 different colors with a larger tube of white and black and a small painter's palette with 3 brushes. I've been using these paints for about a week now, and I'm really excited and impressed by the quality of this stuff. So if you are interested in buying this starter pack or any of their other materials that they make, go to artistro.com and use promo code Chris Kempter, all caps, just to be safe, because I'm not sure if it's cap sensitive. I did everything with this painting from these paints, so go check them out. Use promo code Chris Kempter. That helps you out and me because it gives you 10% off. Use promo code Chris Kempter at checkout and you will get a 10% discount on everything that you bought. So go check them out, artistro.com. You can also find them on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest, and YouTube at Artistro Paints. Thank you, Artistro, for sponsoring this video. Now, without further ado, back to the video. Now for the wonderful bee. Now you can do whatever kind of bee you want. You can do a hornet, a wasp, a yellow jacket, but I don't think anyone's gonna buy that because everyone generally are terrified of those. So you're probably gonna wanna pick a bee that everyone either thinks is cute or doesn't normally sting people on a normal basis. So that's why I went with a bumblebee. Not because the reference photo that I was using is a bumblebee, but just because, you know, you get my point. Anyway, so I am putting the black in right now, and the one nice thing about black is you don't really have to use it super wet. You can if you want. It doesn't matter because as long as it doesn't run on you and you don't put too much water on there and you don't have it dripping down the canvas, that it basically can be as wet or as dry as you want it to be. The least amount of water that you add is going to be the blackest. So if you add no water at all, then you're gonna get a very dark midnight black. If you add a lot of water, you're gonna get a more of a gray color. So it just depends on how you want to do that. Now, every single one of these paints, as you've heard, was supplied by Artistro, and this is just the black that they sent me, and all the other colors that I used in this painting are phthalo green, pale green, yellow ochre, carmelian blue, black, and white. Those are the only colors that I used, but you can pick whatever colors. If you want to change up the color of the flowers, you can do that. To be completely honest, that's exactly what I did with this painting. In the original drawing, the flowers in the painting were actually a pinkish red color, and I didn't want to copy it completely, so I wanted to add a blue in there. And I had to kind of pick which colors would work best with yellow, and blue and yellow worked pretty well, because white would blend completely in with the canvas, yellow and orange would kind of look a little strange, so blue actually worked out great. But you can pick whatever color you want. You can't really see very well the outline that I'm using in this for the bee. I can see it when I'm working, but because of the contrast and the white canvas, the camera really didn't pick it up that well. I promise you it's there. I'm not freehanding this completely. I did that work when I started the drawing, and I kind of took care of that at the beginning. I am kind of following a very fine and tiny distinct pencil line, but one thing I am doing is I am painting over the lines so that I don't see them anymore. But there's also a trick you can use. If you don't want the pencil lines there, what you can do is after everything is dried and everything is finished, you can go back over and just erase whatever pencil line you have in there, and it won't damage or change any of the paint that you have used on the canvas. Like, it won't smear it or anything as long as it's dry. Now if it's wet, of course you're going to smear it everywhere, but as long as it's dry, it won't do anything to the paint, but it will get rid of those pencil lines. And I actually did that when I finished this painting. Now, the one thing that helped me out a lot in this painting and making this little bumblebee look very fluffy is I used the flat, the number 6 brush that Artistro acrylic paint sent me, and I just kind of went out and to the edges. You can see I just kind of bumped the flat of the brush and made him look like he's got a bunch of fuzzies everywhere. And it will make your bee or whatever you use look a little bit more friendly and more cute, and probably make people less terrified of it. But I think that would mainly depend on what kind of bee you used. I would definitely suggest not using a wasp or a hornet or anything people are terrified of. Now, the eye that you put in there is no bumblebee actually has eyeballs like that, but there are little things like this that you can make the bumblebee and whatever you use, whatever insect or bird or whatever you put in, more personable and less likely to be realistic, more cartoonish, is changing the shape of the eye. You see this a lot in actually cartoons and animated movies where they'll take the body style and change it, or the eyes will be super big and it will be unnatural, but it still looks cool, and it looks artsy, as you would say. And Bumblebee doesn't have a tear-shaped eye, but it actually worked out, and it made it look a little better. Again, it was very difficult for the camera to pick this up, but I'm doing the wings right now, and I'm putting down a very, very thin strokes. I'm putting down very thin strokes of grayish gold color because these are his wings, and I wanted to give the wings a little bit more of a kind of tinge of gold in them. Maybe they were reflecting the color of the Bumblebee when I put the yellow in here, but I decided to start putting in a little bit more gray as it went along to kind of give it an outline, because as long as you can kind of see the outline of the wings, it makes it look a little bit better. But you definitely do not want to add too much black. The wings are supposed to be see-through, and it would be in your interest, and it would actually make it look much better if you could almost barely see the actual wings and just kind of have a very faint gray where the outline of the wings are. And the one thing that you're going to want to do is go very light with your colors. When you are putting on watery paint and you're using the background as your highlights, it's much more difficult to add the color than it is to take away the color. Actually, I said that completely backwards. It's much easier to add color and darken things than it is to make it lighter, because you got to go back over it with the actual white paint and it doesn't look the same. So that's why I would use a light hand on adding black, and make sure you know how much you're going to use and things like that before you start adding a lot of color. Now, the reason why I kind of eliminated where the wing came up right there was I realized that the wing was supposed to be on the other side of the body, so I wanted it to look a little bit more natural and like the wing wasn't, or both the wings weren't on one side. So that's why I kind of moved the wing further up onto the body. Now, this is where I start adding the gold. Now, the reason why I'm putting more gold in this one little spot is it's actually, like I said before, the wings are see-through, and it is going to be blending in and showing through the wing to the actual gold of the body. Now, the same thing applies here when you're putting on color as when you're putting on the black or anything else. You go very light at first because it's a lot easier to make things more dark than it is to make them light. Now, this is a very watery yellow that I'm using, and I'm actually kind of leaving off a space where I know that it's going to be more white. And you can actually use your fingers and kind of eliminate stuff if you go too far, as long as you're quick enough to do it before it dries. You can wipe stuff off, but you need to do it before it dries. And the problem with acrylics is it actually dries pretty quickly. Now, the very first video that I ever did, one of the things I said in the video was, in art, there's a fine line between not far enough and too far. And that's something that I've used again and again when I'm trying to figure out what needs to be added or what needs to be subtracted, is knowing when to stop and stop adding things it's a very, very valuable thing. And sometimes you just need to take a break. Like, that's why people tell you to take a step back and look at things, because there was one painting that I was doing that I was so focused on this one little section of rocks in the small corner of the painting, and it looked really good when I was up close, but when I stepped back, it was like, wow, there's way too much detail there. Because when you take a step back and you look at the painting as a whole, you're like, wow, that really didn't need to be that detailed. But once you take a step back and you see things like, hey, it needs to be more fuzzy, or this needs to be more dark, as long as you can recognize that, it's pretty easy to add those things. But if you're like, wait, I made that too dark, when you're doing a watercolor style, it's a lot harder to make that white. But that's why I would suggest doing this style right here with acrylic paint, because when you're doing acrylic paint, it's a little bit easier to add white than it is when you're doing watercolor. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm just adding a little bit more black to kind of give it that fuzzy feeling and kind of make it look a little bit more hairy and fluffy, and make it, I think it just adds the cute factor goes up a little bit when you do that. And I'm doing that on every surface that needs to have a little bit more fluff and cuddliness in there, and it makes it look a little cuter, and probably people will like it more. But I felt like this was a good painting and something that would be easy for people that haven't done a lot of painting in their lives and haven't, or maybe just started, one of the most important things is to not get discouraged. And doing something like this is just a way to encourage yourself. When I was first starting, I was very discouraged because nothing was working. But when I decided to sit down and work on something super simple, I was able to encourage myself, and I was able to get past that discouragement where I was like, I can't do anything, nothing looks good. That's why you need to get simple paintings to encourage yourself, because you're never gonna paint the Mona Lisa in a day. That comes with years of experience, and you will be always improving your skills, but you will never improve your skills if you don't try. It's very important to do a simple painting like this so that you can prove to yourself that you actually can paint. That's speaking from experience, and that's one of the things that helped me out a lot. Alright guys, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and a comment so that maybe your comment will be read in a future video. So, it's come to that time. We're gonna read one of the comments that someone posted on my channel right here, right now, and it is from Brad Mack. Yes, Chris, period, sturdily is a word. Well, thank you, Mr. Brad. Now I don't have to use Google. If you would like to have your comment possibly read, leave it below. Be sure to subscribe to my channel because that always helps me out. And if you're interested in buying this painting, it's actually pretty cheap and it's going to be posted on my website, kempterkanvas.com. Please go visit and check out all my other paintings. So thank you guys for watching this video once again. And as always, peace out.